The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal cathedral, its dome reaching so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area designed for their specific needs. The Zephyrians floated in their crystal pods, their bodies made of living light. The Mindari sat perfectly still, their large heads pulsing with soft telepathic energy. The Corvani spread their wing arms wide, showing off their colorful feathers. At the center of it all, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone at the human podium. She was a small figure compared to the massive aliens around her, but she held herself straight and proud. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her blue diplomatic uniform looked plain next to the elaborate robes and natural armor of the other species. Elder Cathara of the Zephyrians began to speak, his voice echoing through the chamber like wind through crystal caves. We have called this emergency session to address the human problem that has plagued our galaxy for too long. Elena kept her face calm, but her hands tightened slightly on the podium's edge. She had expected this day for months. The other species had been whispering about humanity's violent nature and crude methods in the hallways and private meetings. They complained about how humans handled pirates too aggressively, how they asked too many questions about restricted technologies, how they interfered in conflicts that were none of their business. The species known as humans, Cathara continued, has shown time and time again that they cannot follow the peaceful ways of our council. They start fights where there should be diplomacy. They use weapons where there should be words. They act first and ask permission later. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The snake-like Sethians hissed their approval. The insect-like Thrix clicked their mandibles in what Elena knew was their version of applause. Elder Cathara's crystalline form grew brighter as he spoke with more passion. Just last month, humans attacked a Corvani trading post without waiting for council approval. They claimed it was to stop pirate activity. But this is exactly the kind of unauthorized violence we can no longer accept. Elena almost smiled at that. The Corvani trading post had been selling weapons to slavers and had kidnapped 37 children from a human colony. But she said nothing. She had learned that the council preferred their version of events. 3 months ago, another voice joined in. This was Mindari Counselor Veltar, his telepathic words appearing directly in everyone's minds. Human ships entered the forbidden zone around the dead world of Zerion without permission. They refused to explain their presence when questioned. Elena remembered that mission clearly. Ancient war machines had been waking up on Zerion, and human scientists had risked their lives to put them back to sleep. But the council had classified the whole incident, so officially it never happened. The humans also refused to share their technologies properly, added General Vorthak of the Corvani military. They keep secrets about their ship designs and weapons. They claim some knowledge is too dangerous to share. This shows they do not trust their fellow council members. More murmurs of agreement. Elena thought about the quantum disruptors that could crack planets in half, or the void bombs that could erase entire solar systems. Some knowledge really was too dangerous to share, but again she stayed silent. Elder Cathara raised one of his crystal arms for quiet. The final decision has been made. After careful consideration and voting by all member species, the human race is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. You have 7 days to remove all human presence from council space. Elena had expected this, but hearing it officially still felt like a punch to the chest. Humanity had been part of the council for over 200 years. They had fought in 3 galactic wars, helped discover dozens of new worlds, and saved countless lives. But all of that was forgotten now. Ambassador Vasquez, Cathara said, his tone formal and cold. Do you have any final words before this session is closed? Elena looked around the vast chamber. She saw some faces that looked sorry about this decision, mostly from the younger species who had worked directly with humans. But the older, more powerful species all looked satisfied. They wanted humanity gone, and they had gotten their wish. She could have given a speech. She could have reminded them of all the times humans had helped them. She could have warned them about the things humanity had been quietly handling in the background. But Elena knew it would not matter. They had already made up their minds. Instead, she simply gathered her papers from the podium and placed them neatly in her briefcase. She nodded once to the assembly, turned around, and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence of the chamber. As she reached the door, she heard one young Thrix representative call out, "Wait!" Don't you want to defend your species? Don't you want to argue? Elena stopped and turned back for just a moment. Her voice was quiet but clear enough for everyone to hear. No, you have made your choice. We will respect it. Then she walked out, leaving the council chamber forever. Within hours, Elena was aboard the human diplomatic ship New Geneva, sending out encrypted messages to every human colony, outpost, and ship in the galaxy. The message was short and simple. Protocol Exodus. Silence maintained. 7 days. On Mars, Admiral Chen received the message and immediately began preparations. On the mining colony of New Dublin, Manager O'Brien started loading the evacuation ships. On the research station orbiting the black hole Charybdis, Dr. Patel began shutting down experiments that had taken decades to set up. Across 12 star systems and hundreds of human settlements, the same scene played out. No panic, no protests, no desperate calls to alien friends who might help them. Just quiet, efficient preparation for departure. Elena sat in her cabin aboard the New Geneva and looked out at the stars. She thought about the things the Council did not know. The ancient monitoring systems that humans maintained in secret. The cosmic threats that humanity watched for while others slept. The delicate balance of a dozen different ecosystems that human scientists kept stable. She opened her personal log and began to record. Today, the Galactic Council chose to remove humanity from their organization. They believe this will bring them peace and stability. They do not understand that we were never the source of chaos in their galaxy. We were the ones holding the chaos back. Elena paused and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, ancient things were stirring. Dark forces that had been quiet for millennia were beginning to move again. Systems that had run smoothly for centuries would soon begin to fail. And the galaxy's protectors were being sent away. They wanted us to leave in silence, she said to her log. So we will. But silence works both ways. When they need us most, they will find only the same silence they demanded. The New Geneva turned away from Council space and headed toward the outer rim, where the rest of humanity was gathering for their long journey into the unknown. Behind them, the Galactic Council celebrated their victory, not knowing that they had just signed their own death warrant. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the cargo vessel New Horizon and watched the last transport shuttle dock with their ship. Another family of colonists from the outer rim settlement of Haven's Rest had just come aboard, carrying only what they could fit in 2 bags each. That's the last one. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the communication station, all 847 colonists from Haven's Rest are now aboard our ships. Maria nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Captain Santos. We will be departing Haven's Rest in 30 minutes. Find your assigned quarters and prepare for a long journey. She turned to look out the main view screen at the planet below. Haven's Rest had been humanity's farthest colony. A beautiful world with purple seas and golden continents. The humans had spent 20 years terraforming it and building cities that blended perfectly with the natural landscape. Now they were leaving it all behind. Captain, said her first officer, Commander Zhang, the colonists are asking if we're really never coming back. Maria was quiet for a moment. The truth was she did not know. Admiral Chen's final orders had been clear. Complete evacuation of all human presence in Council space. No exceptions, no delays, and most importantly, no explanations to the other species about why they were leaving certain things behind. Tell them we're going on a long journey, Maria finally said. That's all anyone needs to know right now. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were happening on hundreds of worlds. On Kepler Station, the massive trading hub that connected 15 different star systems, human merchants were quietly closing their shops and canceling contracts. The station's alien traders were confused but not worried. They assumed other species would simply take over the human businesses. What they did not notice was that the humans were also shutting down systems that seemed unimportant. Power regulators that kept the station's energy grid stable. Air recycling filters that removed toxins the other species could not detect. Communication boosters that kept messages flowing clearly between distant parts of the station. Manager Rodriguez of Kepler Station stood in his office, looking at a wall display showing dozens of systems going offline. Each system had a small note next to it. Human maintenance only, no replacement technicians available. Sir, said his assistant, a young Corvani named Chirik. Why are the humans shutting down so many things? These systems seem important. Rodriguez smiled sadly. They are important, but we signed agreements saying only humans would maintain them. Security reasons, they said. Now that humans are leaving, those agreements are void. Chirrut looked confused. But surely they can teach other species to run these systems before they leave. The Galactic Council gave them 7 days to get out, Rodriguez said. Some of these systems took years to learn properly. Besides, I don't think the Council wants human help with anything anymore. Meanwhile, on the research world of New Alexandria, Dr. Sarah Kim was packing up her laboratory. She had spent 15 years studying the quantum storms that sometimes appeared near black holes. Her research had led to new ways to predict these storms and protect ships from their devastating effects. Her research partner, a Mindari scientist named Thelgeth, watched her pack with obvious distress. Sarah, you cannot simply leave this work unfinished. We are on the verge of a major breakthrough. Dr. Kim sealed another box of equipment. I'm sorry, Thelgeth. I really am. But my orders are clear. But what about the storm warning system you built? What about the shelters you designed? Who will maintain them? Dr. Kim paused in her packing. The storm warning system covered 50 star systems and protected millions of ships every year. The emergency shelters had saved entire colonies from quantum storm destruction. But the system was incredibly complex, and she was the only person who truly understood how it all worked together. The technical manuals are all in the research database, she said quietly. Any good scientist should be able to figure it out. But even as she said it, Dr. Kim knew that was not true. The system was built on human intuition and experience as much as hard science. It would take decades for someone else to learn what she knew. On the military outpost of Firebase Delta, Colonel Jackson was overseeing the removal of human weapons and equipment. The base protected 3 star systems from pirate attacks. Working alongside alien military forces in a joint command structure, General Vorthak, the same Corvani who had spoken against humans at the council meeting, arrived to watch the evacuation. Colonel Jackson, he said, I hope there are no hard feelings about the council's decision. It was necessary for galactic peace. Colonel Jackson did not look up from his datapad as he checked off items being loaded onto transport ships. No hard feelings, General. We're just following orders. Good, good. General Vorthak looked around the base. I assume you're leaving behind the defensive systems? The early warning networks? Surely those belong to the Joint Command, not just to humanity. Colonel Jackson finally looked up. I'm afraid not, General. Those systems were built with human technology and are maintained by human personnel. We can't leave them behind without proper operators. But who will watch for pirate attacks? Who will coordinate the defense of these systems? Colonel Jackson shrugged. That's not my problem anymore, sir. I'm sure the Council will figure something out. As human ships lifted off from bases, colonies, and stations across the galaxy, they left behind more than just buildings and equipment. They left gaps in systems that other species did not even know existed. On the ocean world of Aquatica, human marine biologists had been secretly managing the ecosystem for decades. They had introduced certain bacteria that kept harmful algae blooms under control. They had carefully balanced the populations of different sea creatures to maintain the food chain. Without them, the oceans would slowly become toxic and empty. On the desert world of Aretus, human climatologists had been running weather control systems that brought rain to the driest regions. The systems were automated, but they needed constant small adjustments that only humans knew how to make. Without those adjustments, the weather patterns would slowly shift, turning green valleys back into lifeless desert. In the deep space monitoring stations scattered throughout Council territory, human technicians had been watching for signals from beyond the galaxy's edge. They tracked the movement of dark matter clouds that could disrupt entire solar systems. They monitored ancient alien artifacts that might suddenly become active. They kept watch for threats that were so rare and dangerous that most species had forgotten they existed. Captain Santos received a final message from Admiral Chen as her ship prepared to jump to hyperspace. The message was simple. All human vessels report successful evacuation. Total rescued 23.7 million humans. Total abandoned installations 1,247. Estimated time until alien authorities notice critical system failures 6 to 18 months. Maintain communication silence until further notice. As the New Horizon entered hyperspace, Maria looked back at the star system they were leaving behind. Haven's Rest was already beginning to fade from view, but she could see the orbital platforms that humans had built around the system's other planets. Mining stations, communication relays, defense satellites, all of them would continue running for a while on automatic systems, but eventually they would break down. And when they did, there would be no humans left to fix them. Commander Zhang, Maria said quietly, set course for the rendezvous point at Exodus Station, and prepare a full report on all systems we've left behind. Someone's going to need that information eventually. The human exodus continued in perfect silence, leaving behind a galaxy that had no idea what it had just lost. Mindari Counselor Veltar sat in his meditation chamber aboard the council station, trying to understand the strange emptiness he felt in his mind. For as long as he could remember, the galaxy had been filled with a constant background hum of telepathic energy. Billions of minds thinking, feeling, and dreaming across thousands of worlds created a kind of mental music that never stopped. But now, something was different. There was a quiet space where part of that music used to be. It makes no sense, he said to his assistant, a younger Mindari named Kolthes. Humans were never strong telepaths. They should not have contributed much to the galactic mind song. Kolthes was reviewing reports from across council space. Perhaps it is just the shock of change, Counselor. The silence will pass as we adjust to their absence, but Veltar was not convinced. The empty feeling was growing stronger each day, not weaker. It was as if someone had removed an entire section from a great orchestra, and now the remaining musicians were playing out of tune without realizing why. Meanwhile, on the trading station of Nexus Point, Manager Theclor was dealing with his first real crisis since the humans left 3 months ago. The station's power grid had been fluctuating wildly for weeks, causing brownouts and system failures throughout the facility. The human technician said this might happen, reported his chief engineer, a Corvani named Vextar. They left detailed manuals, but the power regulation system is incredibly complex. We think we understand it, but every time we make an adjustment, something else goes wrong. Theclor looked at the readouts showing power fluctuations across the station. Before the humans left, the power grid had been rock-solid stable. Now it was like trying to balance on a wire in a windstorm. What about hiring technicians from other species? He asked. We've tried, sir, but this system uses human technology that interfaces with 17 different alien power sources. The humans designed it custom for this station over a period of 20 years. No one else has ever seen anything like it. On the agricultural world of Greenfields, Farmer Zolnicki was watching his crops die. The irrigation system that had worked perfectly for decades was now delivering too much water to some fields and not enough to others. His Sethian neighbors were having the same problems. The human agricultural advisors used to adjust the system every few days, Zolnicki told the Planetary Council. They said the soil conditions changed constantly and the irrigation had to adapt. We thought it was just human busywork, Council Leader Mextara hissed in frustration. Surely it cannot be that complicated. Crops need water, soil, and sunlight. We have all of these things. Yes, said Zolnicki. But the humans had special sensors that measured dozens of different factors in the soil: mineral content, bacterial levels, moisture retention, temperature fluctuations. They made tiny adjustments based on data we never even knew existed. Similar problems were appearing across the galaxy, but slowly, and in ways that most aliens did not immediately connect to the human departure. On the mining world of Deepor, the automated extraction systems were breaking down more frequently. The human maintenance crews had been replaced by Corvani technicians, but somehow the machines seemed to fail in new and unexpected ways. It's like the machines are behaving differently, complained Chief Engineer Gorthak to his supervisor. The humans always seemed to know when a machine was about to break down, even when all the indicators said it was running fine. They called it intuition, but I think they had access to data we don't understand. On the research station orbiting the neutron star Pulsar 7, alien scientists were struggling with experiments that had been running smoothly for years. Dr. Zelthara, a brilliant Zephyrian physicist, was trying to replicate results from a project that had been jointly run with human researchers. The humans always made small adjustments to the containment field that they said were just to be safe, she told her team. But now, without those adjustments, the field is becoming unstable. I'm afraid we may have to shut down the entire project. The experiments at Pulsar 7 were studying exotic matter that could revolutionize space travel. Losing that research would set galactic science back by decades. But perhaps the most serious problems were appearing in the Outer Rim territories, where pirate activity was increasing at an alarming rate. Captain Jexathor of the Corvani patrol ship Swiftwing was reviewing attack reports with growing concern. Pirates used to avoid the outer rim sectors, he told his crew. The risk was too high, the payoff too small. But in the last 2 months, we've had 17 attacks in areas that haven't seen pirate activity in years. What changed? Asked his first officer. Captain Jexathor looked at a star chart showing recent attacks. They were all in areas that had been patrolled by human ships before the Exodus. I think the humans were doing more than just official patrols. They were probably running intelligence operations, tracking pirate movements, maybe even conducting unofficial raids on pirate bases. Should we request more ships from the Council fleet? I already did. They said our current patrol schedule is adequate and that we're probably just seeing a temporary increase in activity. Captain Jexathor sighed. They don't understand that the humans weren't just patrolling these areas. They were actively hunting pirates. Back on the Council station, Elder Kithara was in his crystal chamber, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Most of the reports were routine, but there were an unusual number of requests for technical assistance, equipment replacements, and emergency repairs. The transition is proceeding smoothly, he told the other Council members during their weekly meeting. Some minor disruptions in human-managed systems, but nothing that cannot be handled by qualified technicians from other species. General Vorthak was less optimistic. We've lost contact with 3 deep space monitoring stations in the last month. The automated systems are still running, but no one is responding to communications. Probably just communication equipment failures, said Elder Kethara dismissively. We'll send repair teams when convenient. But Mindari Counselor Veltar was not convinced. The mental quiet he felt was growing stronger, and now he was beginning to sense something else. Fear, confusion, a growing sense of unease among the populations of several worlds. Has anyone noticed unusual patterns in the recent problems? He asked the Council. Power failures, system malfunctions, equipment breakdowns. It seems like an unusual number of things are going wrong at the same time. The other Council members exchanged glances. They had noticed, but they had been trying not to think about it. Coincidence, said General Vorthak, but he did not sound convinced. Old equipment breaks down. That's normal. But most of these systems are not old, Veltar pointed out. Many of them were installed or upgraded within the last decade. And they all have one thing in common. The Council chamber was quiet as the implications sank in. They were all maintained by humans. Elder Kithara said slowly. For the first time since the human exodus began, the Galactic Council members began to feel a small chill of worry. But it was still early and the problems were still small. They convinced themselves that other species would quickly learn to handle whatever the humans had been doing. They had no idea that the real crisis was still months away in a distant world beyond the galaxy's edge. Admiral Chen was reviewing reports from human intelligence networks that had never been officially acknowledged. Ancient sensor arrays were detecting movement in dark space. Cosmic storms were building in areas that had been quiet for millennia. And deep in the galactic core, something very old and very dangerous was beginning to stir. How long until the Council realizes what's happening? Asked his aide. Admiral Chen looked at the star charts showing the galaxy they had left behind. Based on our projections, the small problems will become obvious in about 6 more months. The major crisis will hit within 2 years. And will we help them when it does? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, that will depend on whether they ask nicely. The emergency klaxons on Kepler Station had been blaring for 3 hours straight. Manager Rodriguez stood in the command center, watching his displays show cascading system failures throughout the massive trading hub. What had started as minor power fluctuations 6 months ago had grown into a complete breakdown of the station's infrastructure. Life support is failing on decks 12 through 18, reported Chirek, his young Corvani assistant. We've evacuated those sections, but if the pattern continues, we'll lose the entire lower half of the station within days. Rodriguez stared at the readouts in disbelief. What about the backup systems? The redundancies? That's the problem, sir. The backup systems are failing too. It's like they were all connected in ways we never understood. When one system goes down, it creates a chain reaction that takes out the backups. Across the galaxy, similar crises were erupting simultaneously. On the agricultural world of green fields, the irrigation failures had led to massive crop deaths, and now the planet was facing famine. The Sethian population was rioting in the streets, demanding that their government find a solution. "We've tried everything," reported Agricultural Minister Kex Tala to the Planetary Council. "We've brought in experts from 12 different species. We've installed new equipment, rewritten the software, even tried going back to manual irrigation. Nothing works like it used to." Council leader Mextara was examining soil samples that showed alarming chemical imbalances. "How is this possible? The fields worked fine for 30 years and now suddenly they're poisoned?" The human agricultural advisors weren't just managing irrigation, admitted Chief Scientist Velkors. "We've discovered they were also monitoring and adjusting the chemical composition of the soil itself. They were adding specific bacteria, balancing mineral levels, even controlling the pH of groundwater. Without those constant micro-adjustments, the soil is reverting to its natural state, which is toxic to most food crops," Velkors said quietly. "The planet was never naturally suitable for agriculture. The humans spent decades terraforming not just the climate, but the entire ecosystem. On the mining world of deep ore, the situation was even worse. The automated extraction systems had completely shut down after a series of catastrophic failures that killed 17 workers and destroyed millions of credits worth of equipment. The machines are rejecting every command we give them," reported Chief Engineer Gorthak to the mine supervisors. "It's like they don't recognize our authority anymore. The human technicians must have built in some kind of security system that we never knew about." But the truth was much simpler and more terrifying. The humans had not built in security systems. They had simply been the only ones who truly understood how the complex machinery worked. Without their intuitive knowledge and constant small adjustments, the automated systems were making increasingly dangerous mistakes. The worst news was coming from the Outer Rim territories, where the pirate problem had exploded into full-scale warfare. Captain Jexthor of the Swift Wing was sending desperate messages to the Council fleet, requesting immediate reinforcement. "We've lost 12 ships in the last month," his latest report stated. "The pirates have organized into a confederation with military-grade weapons and ships. They're not just raiding anymore, they're conquering entire systems." The pirates had discovered what the Council was only beginning to understand. The humans had been secretly maintaining a complex network of intelligence gathering, early warning systems, and rapid response forces that had kept pirate activity suppressed for decades. Without that network, the Outer Rim was defenseless. But these regional crises were nothing compared to what was happening in the deep space monitoring stations. One by one, the automated facilities that watched for cosmic threats were going silent. Dr. Yilthara, the Zephyrian astrophysicist who had taken over human-operated research projects, was analyzing the last transmission from Deep Space Monitor Station 7 when she made a chilling discovery. The station was tracking something, she told her research team. Something approaching from outside the galaxy. The automated systems flagged it as a potential threat 3 weeks ago, but no one was monitoring the alerts. Her assistant, a young Thrick scientist, looked confused. "What kind of threat?" Dr. Yilthara pulled up the sensor data on her main display. What she saw made her crystalline body dim with fear. "It's a void plague swarm, moving at near light speed. Estimated time to reach the Outer Rim, 14 months. The void plague was the stuff of galactic nightmares, ancient self-replicating machines that consumed entire worlds and turned them into more copies of themselves. The last outbreak had been over 2,000 years ago, and it had taken the combined efforts of 50 species to stop it. But the void plague was contained," said her assistant. "The ancient containment systems keep it locked away in the dead zones between galaxies." Dr. Yilthara was reading through archived files, trying to understand what the human researchers had been doing for the past 2 centuries. What she found made her realize the true scope of the disaster. "The humans weren't just studying cosmic phenomena," she said in a voice filled with growing horror. "They were actively maintaining the containment systems. They've been running secret missions to repair and upgrade ancient barrier networks that most species have forgotten even exist." She pulled up a classified file that had been locked in the human research database. The file showed a massive network of energy barriers, quantum disruptors, and automated defense systems stretched across thousands of light years. All of it had been secretly maintained by human technicians for over 200 years. "Without constant maintenance, the barriers degrade," she continued reading. "Estimated time until complete failure, 18 to 24 months after maintenance stops." The void plague was just the beginning. The files showed dozens of other cosmic threats that the humans had been quietly keeping at bay. Ancient war machines on dead worlds that would reactivate if their control systems failed. Stellar parasites that would spread from star to star, causing supernovas. Dark matter entities that could phase through normal matter and destroy entire planets from the inside. On the Council Station, Elder Cathara was receiving crisis reports from across the galaxy. His crystal form was flickering with stress as he tried to process the scale of the disasters that were unfolding. "It's all connected," Mindari Counselor Veltar was saying. "Every single crisis can be traced back to systems that were maintained by humans. The power grids, the agricultural networks, the defense systems, the deep space monitors. They weren't just participants in galactic civilization. They were the hidden foundation that everything else was built on." General Vorthak was reviewing military reports that showed the rapid spread of pirate confederations throughout the Outer Rim. "We need to recall our entire fleet from peacekeeping missions and send them to the Outer Rim immediately. That will leave the core systems undefended," protested Elder Cathara. "The core systems are already falling apart," General Vorthak replied grimly. "At least if we can hold the Outer Rim, we might have time to figure out how to fix the infrastructure problems." But even as they spoke, new reports were coming in. The weather control systems on a dozen worlds were failing, creating massive storms and droughts. The communication networks that connected distant star systems were degrading, making it harder to coordinate any kind of response. The quantum navigation beacons that guided ships through hyperspace were starting to drift out of alignment. Mindari Counselor Veltar was using his telepathic abilities to scan the minds of his fellow council members. What he found there was fear, confusion, and a growing understanding that they had made a terrible mistake. "We need to contact the humans," he said quietly. Elder Cathara's crystal form flared with anger. "Absolutely not. We made our decision. We cannot show weakness by crawling back to them now." "Pride will not save us from the void plague," Veltar replied. "And pride will not fix the systems that are failing across the galaxy." "The other species will adapt," Elder Cathara insisted. "We have brilliant scientists and engineers from dozens of worlds. Surely they can learn to manage whatever the humans were doing." General Vorthak was reading casualty reports from the Outer Rim battles. "We've already lost 3 entire star systems to the Pirate Confederation. At this rate, we'll lose the entire Outer Rim within 6 months. And these reports about cosmic threats, if even half of them are true, we're looking at an extinction-level crisis." For the first time since the human exodus, the Galactic Council was beginning to understand the true cost of their decision. But their pride and their fear of admitting they were wrong kept them from taking the one action that might save them. Meanwhile, on a hidden world beyond the galaxy's edge, Admiral Chen was receiving reports from automated monitoring systems that the humans had left behind. The systems were designed to observe but not interfere, giving humanity a clear picture of the unfolding disaster. "The cascade failures are happening faster than we predicted," reported Dr. Sarah Kim, the former quantum storm researcher. "The interconnected nature of galactic infrastructure means that each failure accelerates the next one." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "And the void plague?" The emergency session of the Galactic Council took place in a chamber that was barely half full. Many council members could not attend because their homeworlds were dealing with catastrophic system failures, pirate invasions, or complete infrastructure collapse. Those who did manage to arrive looked haggard and desperate. Elder Cathara's crystal form was dim and flickering, showing signs of extreme stress. "The situation reports make it clear that we are facing a galaxy-wide crisis of unprecedented scale." The reports were devastating. 17 star systems had fallen to pirate confederations. 23 worlds were facing starvation due to agricultural failures. The deep space monitoring network was almost completely offline. And now, the most terrifying news of all had reached them. Dr. Yilthera stood at the science podium, her crystalline body barely glowing as she delivered her findings. "The void plague containment barriers have failed. The swarm will reach the Outer Rim territories in less than 8 months. Based on historical data, once they begin consuming worlds, the entire galaxy will fall within 2 years." A heavy silence filled the chamber. Every species present knew the stories of the void plague. Self-replicating machines that turned entire worlds into copies of themselves, spreading like a cosmic cancer that could not be stopped by conventional weapons. "What about our defense fleets?" asked General Vorthak, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Useless," Dr. Yilthara replied bluntly. "The Void Plague adapts to any technology used against it. The only thing that worked in the past was the ancient barrier network, and that system requires constant maintenance by technicians who understood its quantum-level programming. And those technicians were all human," Mindari Counselor Veltar said quietly. Elder Cathara's form flared with frustrated anger. "There must be other options. We cannot accept that our entire civilization depends on one species that we expelled from the Council and banished from our space," Veltar finished. "Yes, that is exactly what we must accept." More reports kept coming in. The communication networks were failing faster now, making it difficult to coordinate any response to the multiple crises. The hyperspace navigation system was starting to break down, stranding ships between star systems. Even the Council station itself was experiencing power fluctuations and life support failures. Captain Jexthor appeared on the main communication screen, his image flickering due to transmission problems. "Council Command, this is the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. We've lost 18 more ships to pirate attacks. Request immediate reinforcement and resupply." General Vorthak looked at his force deployment charts. "We don't have reinforcements to send. Every available ship is either dealing with infrastructure failures or has been lost to various crises." "Then what are our orders?" Captain Jexthor asked. The Council members looked at each other. For the first time in their history, they had no orders to give. The galaxy was falling apart, and they had no idea how to fix it. "We need to contact the humans," Veltar said again, his telepathic voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "It's the only option left." Elder Cathara's pride was still fighting against the obvious truth. "We don't even know where they went. They could be anywhere in the galaxy by now." "Actually," said Dr. Yilthara quietly, "I may have found something." She activated a display showing deep space sensor data. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected a faint signal from beyond the galactic rim. It was brief, but the frequency pattern matches human communication protocols. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some council members insisted it was too late, that the humans would never help them after being expelled. Others argued that they had no choice but to try. Elder Cathara finally called for order. "Even if we could contact them, why would they help us? We rejected them. We banished them. We told them they were not wanted in our galaxy." Veltar's telepathic voice was sad but resolute. "Because that's what humans do. Even when they're hurt, even when they're rejected, they still help those in need. It's one of their most frustrating and admirable qualities." The debate continued for hours, but the reality was simple. The galaxy was dying, and humanity was the only hope for survival. Finally, with great reluctance, Elder Cathara agreed to authorize an attempt to contact the missing humans. Dr. Yilthara worked for days to locate the source of the signal she had detected. When she finally triangulated its position, what she found was shocking. The signal was coming from a fleet of ships positioned just outside the galaxy's edge. In perfect formation, as if they had been waiting, the first message sent to the human fleet was formal and desperate. "To the representatives of humanity, the Galactic Council requests immediate diplomatic contact to discuss mutual assistance in addressing critical galactic security issues." The response came back within hours, and it was not from Admiral Chen or any other military commander. It was from Elena Vasquez, the ambassador who had walked out of the council chamber in silence 2 years before. "Council representatives," her voice said through the communication system, "we have been monitoring the situation in your galaxy. We are prepared to discuss terms for our return." Elder Cathara was surprised by the word terms. "Terms? What terms?" Elena's response was calm but firm. "Humanity will return to help stabilize galactic civilization, but not under the same conditions as before. We require formal recognition of our contributions to galactic security, infrastructure, and scientific advancement. We require equal representation on the Council with veto power over decisions that affect galactic safety, and we require acknowledgement that our methods, while sometimes appearing aggressive to other species, are necessary for dealing with threats that diplomacy cannot handle." The Council members were shocked. These were not the humble, desperate terms they had expected from a species begging to return home. "Those are significant demands," Elder Cathara said carefully. "They are non-negotiable," Elena replied. "The alternative is that you handle the Void Plague, the infrastructure collapse, and the pirate confederations on your own. We wish you luck with that." General Vorthak was reading casualty reports that showed 3 more star systems falling to pirates. "How long do we have to decide?" "The Void Plague will reach inhabited space in 7 months and 18 days, Elena said. "After that, even our return may not be enough to save everyone. I suggest you decide quickly." The debate that followed was intense but brief. The galaxy was facing extinction, and pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. Within 6 hours, the Council voted unanimously to accept humanity's terms. "Agreed," Elder Cathara transmitted to the human fleet. "Your terms are accepted. When can you begin assistance operations?" Elena's response revealed the true scope of human preparation. "Our advance fleet will arrive at your location in 12 hours. Full restoration operations will begin immediately upon our arrival. We have repair ships, technical teams, and defense fleets standing by at multiple staging points throughout the galaxy." Veltar realized what this meant. "You never really left, did you?" Elena was quiet for a moment before answering. "We left your space as requested, but we never stopped watching. We never stopped protecting, and we never stopped preparing for the day when you would need us again." The first human ships to return were not warships or diplomatic vessels. They were repair and maintenance ships that immediately began fixing the failing infrastructure across the galaxy. Human technicians worked alongside alien engineers, patiently explaining the complex systems they had maintained in secret for centuries. The Void Plague barriers were the first priority. Human engineering teams raced across the galaxy, repairing and upgrading containment systems that had been decaying for 2 years. It was dangerous work. Some teams had to operate in areas where the barriers had already partially failed, risking exposure to Void Plague scouts. Dr. Sarah Kim found herself back on the research station at Pulsar 7, working with her old alien colleagues to restore the experiments that had been shut down. "I'm sorry we had to leave," she told Dr. Zelthera as they calibrated quantum containment fields. "We never wanted to abandon the research." Dr. Zelthera's crystal form brightened with relief. "I'm sorry we didn't understand what you were doing. We thought you were just maintenance workers," Sarah smiled. "In a way we were. But maintenance of the galaxy is more complex than most people realize. Within months, the galaxy began to stabilize. The infrastructure failures were repaired. The pirate confederations were broken up by coordinated human military operations. The Void Plague barriers were restored and reinforced. But the relationship between humanity and the other species had changed forever. Humans were no longer junior partners in galactic civilization. They were recognized as the guardians who made civilization possible. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber, but this time at a podium equal in height to all the others. "The crisis is over," she announced. "But we must never forget what caused it. Pride, arrogance, and the assumption that complex systems can be maintained without understanding them." Elder Cathara's form was brighter now, restored to health along with the galaxy's infrastructure. "We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid."